Hear me okay? See and hear. Hey, Curly Sarah. I'm glad you can see and hear us. So, that means others can too. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm the community manager here at 2 Diabetes, working with Diabetes Hands Foundation. And today we have a live interview with Hope Warshaw, who has been a champion of people with diabetes for, my goodness, Hope, I'm not gonna date you. You can tell us yourself if you feel like it, but for a very long time has written a lot of books on diabetes management. Hope is an RN and a certified diabetes educator and has a new book out, which we are here to talk about today. But first, Hope, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here today. The camera is on you. Please start off by just introducing yourself and tell us a bit about you.
Great. Well, first of all, I am delighted to be here. I've been really looking forward to being on this chat with 2 Diabetes and particularly with you, Emily. So quick intro. I have been a dietitian and diabetes educator for roughly about 35 years, which is incredible. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I've, I guess I jokingly say, I guess if you live long enough, you do see a tremendous amount of change, but I have spent my entire career in the world of diabetes. And so just since I know most of the people have diabetes who are in the chat, I came into diabetes basically in about 1978, 79. And it was right when...
Can I interrupt you for a quick second? That's when I came into diabetes.
No, did you?
1978.
So we've lived it from different perspectives.
We have.
So, I mean, so you remember, I mean, blood glucose monitoring, the monitors were just huge.
I didn't even have one for the first year.
Right. They were in nurses' stations in, I was at Emory Hospital. Actually, I was at Grady Hospital in Atlanta. And, but that was really the beginning of glucose monitoring. And so I've lived through, every iteration and generation of that and continuous glucose monitoring and pumps and, I mean, lots and lots of changes and lots of changes in the nutrition world as well. So very, exciting times, still by no means an easy disease whatsoever to manage. It's a grueling, relentless, 24/7 management. I don't have diabetes, but I like to feel that I have a lot of heart and soul for the feeling for people who deal with this disease. So what else do you want to know?
Well, I was thinking something interesting that, or at least it was interesting to me, that last week I did a live interview with psychotherapist Elliot LeBeau, and one of the things that came up in talking with him is that a lot of times people have diabetes themselves, and therefore feel like, I'm an expert. I know everything that's going on around diabetes because I have it, I deal with it constantly, I live with it every single day. And it turns out that for some of us, we have our particular ways that we manage it and deal with it. And I'm speaking about myself, and then this may also speak to some other folks in our audience. But it doesn't mean that we know everything that's going on in the world of diabetes. There's so much progress. I mean, as you said at the very beginning, there's been so much change just since you became involved in the world of diabetes, and I became involved. And for people with diabetes, I think we figure out how we're going to manage it, and then some of us stop paying attention to other options in a way.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
the
true.
world of technology and different kinds of glucometers and different insulin insulin therapy types. And I think sometimes people who study it, who are actual healthcare providers, have a much broader view of that than people who have diabetes themselves, if they are not really actively involved in finding out all of the changes and all that's going on.
I agree with you. I think where I see that most clearly is when I work with people starting them on a pump. And so understandably, I mean, we are, as human beings, creatures of habit. And I think when you are managing this disease, that you do find really what works for you. And I think it's sometimes hard to change, even if you know and think that that change might be a good thing for you. I mean, you know, I have in order to sort of help people make that transition from typically it's multiple daily injections to a pump, I have sort of certain things that I say to just try to begin to seed certain thinking and changes in the way that people manage. Because what I've learned, and I'm always learning from people with diabetes, is that people can't make those leaps and make those changes just dramatically and suddenly, particularly when people are sort of holding pretty secure and tight to what they've done and what has worked for them. Again, very understandably so.
Right. I remember, you know, when I was about, I don't know, maybe 12, a family friend watching me do an injection and sort of marveling that this young kid knew how much insulin to do. And she asked me, how much insulin do you know how to do? And I said, I don't know how much insulin to do, I guess. And I have to say, I still kind of do that. I still kind of do that today. I've learned so many. Yeah, everybody, you guys didn't see Hope's gesture of sort of check the wind, the direction of the wind, and then just
the wild ass guess.
Exactly, a wag.
Right.
And
with clearly some instinct and
Absolutely.
with some history of experiences.
Right.
But I mean, that's actually sort of
an informed wag.
It's a good segue in a way into the topic of restaurant eating, because as I sort of told you when we were talking the other day, sort of our little pre-interview, is that I've been writing about the topic of healthy restaurant eating for about 20 years. And there's been a huge evolution in the amount of nutrition information that's available, like right out there. You know, when I first started writing, the first book I wrote was Guide to the Restaurant Companion, and it came out in 1990. And to get information at that point, I mean, that was before the internet. You know, I was writing to the corporate headquarters of certain chains, and you know, most restaurants, I mean, maybe a McDonald's and a few other large chains had nutrition information just because they were doing it from a quality control standpoint. I mean, you fast forward to the end of this year, the end of 2015, and I don't know if people realize this, but as part of the Affordable Care Act, there is a regulation that will go into effect that says that restaurant chains and other food establishments that for restaurants, it's if you have more than 20 locations and you serve the same basic menu, you will have to provide particularly calorie information that will either have to be on a menu board if it's what I call walk up and order restaurants, or on a menu for sit down restaurants. And they will have to also, and this is an important point for people with diabetes, they will have to have available other nutrition information, which does include carbohydrate, saturated fat, sodium, I mean, nutrients of interest to people with diabetes. So I think people living in different areas of the country, I think living in California, in your particularly progressive area of Northern California, you know, you are seeing, like I think the Starbucks out there have calorie information on their menu boards. I mean, I'm not seeing that in our politically savvy Washington, D.C., but yet anyways, but that will have to be in place because of federal regulations. So, I mean, that's huge. And, you know, I feel like today people can go online to a Subway, a Starbucks, you know, many different restaurants. And, you know, if you take the time, God bless you, you can find the nutrition information. And what I suggest that people do with that information is to, you know, let's go back for a second to sort of that wild ass guess or whatever we want to call it, WAG, and also back to that concept of being creatures of habit, is that we really do eat minimal number of foods, and then we take those foods and we put them into a minimal number of meals, and probably 80% of the time that's what we're eating. So my question, I guess rhetorical in a way, is why not get, you know, better carbohydrate, at least numbers, to work with when you're eating the same food. So one of the things I did want to mention related to the book, which is Eat Out, Eat Well, there is an app that is called Eat Out Well, and it is free. It's available on iTunes and Google Play, and there's more information about it on my website, which is hopewarshaw.com. And basically that app allows people, it sort of is GPS driven, so it will identify where you are in restaurants that are around you, and then you can go in and look at the nutrition information for specific menu items.
We have a really great question here from David already in the chat room, who is saying, with the increasing availability of nutrition information, this raises a possibly unanswerable question. It's the old lead a horse to water problem. How do we get people to use the information that is available to them?
Well, I think it's a very good question. And there has been a few research studies, I'm going to tell you, you know, I could probably count them on two hands, that have looked at whether people actually do put that nutrition information into action. New York City has particularly been very progressive about making that information available. So a couple studies have come out of there. As a researcher at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health, Bleich, B-L-E-I-C-H, who's done a couple of studies. And the findings are pretty equivocal. You know, sometimes having that information accessible doesn't help. Sometimes it helps people to make slightly healthier decisions. I recently wrote an article I write a column in the Washington Post about once in 4-6 weeks, and I was asking a colleague of mine who works for the National Restaurant Association for a quote sort of about what she felt the impact of more omnipresent nutrition information would do. And I thought she had a valid point, saying that perhaps as this information becomes more omnipresent, that if people are seeing it here and they're seeing it there and they're seeing it, you know, the next restaurant they go to, that perhaps that availability will sink in a little bit more. I certainly would like to think that.
Yeah, we have another really really astute question by Terry in the chat room right now, who is asking, how reliable is the caloric information that restaurants provide about their foods?
Again, I think that is a very good question. If you look at the FDA regulations on this federal nutrition information, they do give some parameters of plus or minus on calories and nutrients, within which, if FDA were going to go in and do an analysis in sort of a spot check sort of way, restaurants would have to be plus or minus these parameters. And let me just segue for a second, because I think it's very important for people with diabetes to understand, when I think as a dietitian that when people are looking at the nutrition facts panel on packaged foods that we've gotten so familiar with, it's the same FDA that's regulating those, and we look at those, whether it's calories or carbohydrate grams, like they're super exacting, and there also are plus or minus parameters on those nutrients as well. The reality of the matter is green beans picked and packaged in one time a year and from this year to this year is not identical. It's a balance. I think for the food industry and the restaurant industry, there have to be some parameters. They can't be held to an unreasonable level. I guess a little bit more on restaurant nutrition information. I have felt very comfortable, I would say, with the nutrition information from particularly the big national and international restaurants. They have the resources to do the nutrition analysis, which is not at no cost. That's absolutely true. And there's several different ways of doing it. I think where maybe I would question a little bit, and this is just an instinct question, is maybe some particularly smaller restaurants that provide nutrition information. And I guess I would also say to people, and a few other caveats that I actually talk about in Eat Out, Eat Well, is, and I think a couple of good examples is, if you, as a knowledgeable person with diabetes, are sitting down to this restaurant meal, use your knowledge base, use your instincts. I mean, there's quality control, and I'm using McDonald's just because everyone knows McDonald's. I'm not touting McDonald's by any means, but, you could end up with a burger with more ketchup and more pickles on a given day, one day versus another. The best example to me is pizza, because when you think about who cuts pizza, when you're getting nutrition information, it's exact cuts on like a, whatever size pizza. When you got like a person who's like madly churning out the pizzas, you're not getting even slices by any stretch. I mean, you're getting some big slices and you're getting some small slices. Well, they don't have the same nutrient counts.
Right.
So you got to use your smarts as always.
Right. I have to say, I once was in a supermarket and I found a sugar-free pie, and I forget what kind of pie. It was a fruit pie, sugar-free pie, and it's advertised it nice and big on the label, and I was so excited. So I looked at the ingredients, and the second ingredient was sugar.
So was that made like by a small supermarket chain, or?
No, it had apparently been mislabeled. Oops, we put the sugar-free label on the regular pie. Holy moly. Guys. So yeah, all of this clearly needs to be taken with a grain of salt, so to speak. So let's talk more about the book. Can you kind of walk us through the progress of how the book works and how people can use it?
Sure. So I can hold it up, but people can't see it, right? You can see it.
No, they can see it. There you go. That's what it looks like, everybody. Eat out, eat well, the guide to healthy eating. And it's that thick. It's a reference.
It's a resource. So it is about 6 by 8 and about almost 600 pages. So the book divides into 3 sections. Section 1 is more general information. It's healthy eating for diabetes today. It's some tips and tactics for healthy restaurant eating in general. I talk about the pitfalls of healthy restaurant eating, offer some skills and strategies. There's a whole chapter on diabetes dining dilemmas. So I talk about alcohol, and I talk about delayed meals, and eating desserts if one chooses to do so, and how to manage that. Then section 2 and 3 are the 15 chapters on different types of restaurant cuisines. Section 3 actually is all ethnic restaurants. So it's Japanese, and it's Middle Eastern, and it's Chinese, Mexican, Italian, pizza, etc. Did I name 8? And then section 2 is more of your sort of American style restaurants. So it's fast food, it's sub shops, it's family style restaurants, it's steakhouses, salad bars. So the sections 2 and 3 are very specific to those different cuisines.
And you also have a whole piece on sort of common pitfalls in restaurant eating. Can we talk about what some of those common pitfalls are?
So in section 1, one of the chapters is dedicated to the 10 pitfalls of restaurant eating. And I won't go through all 10 here, but I will pick out, I would say, sort of the top 4 pitfalls. And I'm going to list them in, to me, order of priority for most people. And number 1, I think, is portions, because restaurant portions, particularly sit-down restaurants, are huge today, unless you go up to some, fancy places where portions might get a little bit more tame. Number 2 pitfall is fats and oils, and they really drive up calories. So, there are fats that we find in ingredients. There's fats that we find in certain dishes, like an Alfredo sauce in an Italian restaurant. And then we find fat at the table. We may see mayonnaise, we may see butter, we see salad dressing. And then, basically restaurants like using fats and oils because it makes food taste good and it keeps food moist. So talked about portions, fats, sodium in restaurant foods is huge. People tend to think that you're getting a lot of sodium when you're salting food, but that's not the case. 75–80% of the sodium that we eat is from processed foods and sort of processed / restaurant foods. You can get your 2,300 milligrams of sodium a day that we should be eating easily in one, fast food meal, one sub sandwich and a bag of chips. That's pretty easy to do. And I'd say the 4th pitfall is that restaurant meals make it hard to get the fill of fruit, vegetables, whole grains, and low-fat dairy foods that really should be the base of a healthy eating plan for most people. So it's not easy.
It is not easy. And one of the things, good, but it can be.
Right.
I hope so. One of the things that I run up against personally a lot is I'm a vegetarian. Mm-hmm. And so I find that I feel like I have more choices at a lot of Asian restaurants that have a good wide variety of vegetable dishes.
You can go to the veggie entrees.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I love that stuff. And I have no idea what's in the sauce other than from experience. I know it's got a lot of carbohydrate in it. But I really have no idea how to bolus for, say, a Chinese mixed vegetable dish with some kind of sauce.
Right. So since I'm sure you've done that more than once or twice, sort of what's been your learning? What history do you take to those kind of meals?
Well, generally, I pick, this is where people will be so appalled at how unscientific I am. Those who know me in the chat room already know that I'm not a particularly scientific thinker. I pick some number of units that seems like a little bit too much for me, and then that's what I do. So for me, I'm very insulin sensitive. And usually if I'm going to eat an actual whole plate of like a stir-fried vegetable dish at a restaurant that has some kind of mystery sauce on it, I'll go with like 4 units of insulin, which for me is quite a lot.
4 plus or 4 total?
4 total.
Okay.
And sometimes it works and I'm great. And sometimes it's too much and sometimes it's not enough. Nature of diabetes.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, some of what you've got in there, and I know this really from looking at recipe books. And early on when I was writing about healthy restaurant eating, that's what I did, is I got recipe books out of the library and started to dig in, particularly in ethnic foods, what's in these. And what you'll see is that some items are marinated, probably less so with veggie dishes, but more so with, they're marinating chicken and pork and beef. And in that marinade is typically some sugar. And then when you're looking at those sauces, there is a sort of gelatinous quality to some sauces in Chinese restaurants, and that's cornstarch. And cornstarch is carb. So, I typically tell people to figure at least 5-10 extra grams of carbohydrate that, you're really not physically seeing in sort of bites of food. And then, then you're probably eating rice, and, a little teeny third of a cup of rice has about 15 grams of carbs. So it's pretty easy to eat a cup of rice when you're just putting food on top of that. So the grams of carb can definitely add up.
Right. I have to say, I try to avoid the rice, which means that I'm probably end up with more of that sweet gelatinous sauce. Darn. It can kind of
that sweet gelatinous sauce. Have you seen any difference with like a Thai food, Emily?
Yes, I have actually.
There's not the cornstarchy gelatinous quality.
Gelatinous sauce. I think the Thai food that I have had seems to have less sauce quantity on it. And a lot of Thai food is pretty sweet. And I don't know if that sweetness in Thai food actually comes from sugar per se, or if it's a sweetness that comes from the delicious and fresh vegetables that are used in that food. I suspect it's sugar. What's your experience?
I think it's sugar. And, again, obviously in Chinese food, there's a sweet and sour, which very typically is deep fat fried and in this just horrendously and obvious sweet sauce. But in Thai restaurants, you'll also see sweet and sour. And, I would stay away from those kind of sauces. Even though the sauce is much lighter than in a Chinese restaurant, it's still pretty loaded. I think you're better off going towards some curries, some of the hot basil and chili dishes, I think are a little bit lighter in sugar and therefore carbohydrate. But I mean, I am a big fan of packing in the veggies as much as you can, even if, you know, and it's not easy. I mean, you just even, you know, I mean, went out for Thai food the other night, and it's just like, you know, you're with some people, and I'm like, can we please get a veggie dish? And, you know, I make sure that we, you know, get like veggie pad Thai, and still there's just not that many vegetables. And then, I mean, when it comes to fruit, what I say about fruit in restaurants is it's like it's missing in action. I mean, it's basically not there. I mean, the only place that maybe you're beginning to see a bit more fruit is, you know, if you're in an Au Bon Pain or you're in a Starbucks or you're seeing a container of pieces of fruit. But it's so darn expensive that you just are, you know, sort of hands off.
Right.
So I really tell people to, if they can, bring fruit with them, and try to fit in fruit as, you know, you're going back to the office and to top off a meal or a mid-morning snack or an afternoon snack, or take the edge off your dinner appetite. But I think it's tough to get in the fruit that people need.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to a dessert question, because you're talking about how there's no fruit in restaurants, and I'm thinking, come on, Hope, there's usually some sort of cobbler or
If
pie.
you want to call that fruit,
If we want to call that. So then here's my question. If for folks who do opt for dessert, does it tend to be better to go with a sort of fruit-based dessert like a cobbler or a piece of pie, or a scoop of ice cream? Or are there sort of general guidelines around those sorts of things?
to me, I mean, and you know, we're really talking strictly diabetes here, but by no means do I think that that's really one answer. I mean, you know, let's just, you know, talk about you. And what I know about you is that, you know, you have type 1 diabetes. I'm pretty sure I know that you're a dancer. And, you know, so you can be probably pretty liberal with calories. I'm sure you can't, you know, always be going hog wild, because you can't. So for you, the decision is more around healthy eating. It's around how much insulin to take. And, you know, then there clearly are vast numbers of people with type 2 diabetes who a priority for many of them is really to be honing in on calories and looking at if they're trying to lose weight, or they're trying to keep some weight off that they have fought hard to lose. So it's different perspectives there. I guess in terms of desserts, I feel like if you are going to choose to have a dessert, make it stupendous. You know, don't just waste those calories and those opportunities to enjoy dessert on just any old dessert. I think that most people, when it comes to dessert, what you're really craving is just a few bites of something sweet to sort of finish off a meal. And it becomes relatively natural to share dessert. And, you know, if it's a big hunking dessert, get a number of forks for the people at the table. Another option, and I don't know if people have thought about this, but I talk about it in the book, is to consider having like a liqueur at the end of a meal, or having like a coffee with a liqueur. Because sometimes that can be like a slow sip while other people are perhaps enjoying a decadent dessert. And it can give you the little bit of sweet taste. And, you know, sometimes just a cup of coffee or an espresso with a little bit of low-calorie sweetener, which can give it a sweet, can be satisfying as well. So people, I mean, I'm about throwing out suggestions. And then people have to try different things and really find what works for them to to what becomes healthy balance for them.
Mm-hmm. So kind of coming up with ways to satisfy if you have a sweet tooth and you want that last bit at the end of a meal, to figure out a way to thoroughly satisfy that without sort of going wild on a giant piece.
Right, and then and not saying to yourself, I'm bad, I've cheated, I'm awful, I'm, but that you've made a choice to do this, and that you've done it smartly, that, if you have insulin requiring diabetes, that you don't go, oh no, I didn't bolus for that, that you use your smarts and your instincts about it.
So we have a couple of requests for food suggestions. One comes from Terry, who is in the chat room. And Terry says that he is particularly carb sensitive or insulin resistant in the morning. I think a lot of people find that. And so he tries to keep his breakfast to about 12 grams of carbohydrate is what he has found works for him. But eating breakfast in a restaurant then becomes really challenging, because then you have the option of eggs and bacon and French toast, which is going to be a whole lot more than 12 grams of carbohydrate. Do you have any restaurant eating suggestions for Terry that could keep his carbs down but still be an enjoyable meal in a restaurant?
It's pretty hard. That's a very small amount of carbohydrate. So, I mean, I would want to know if, if that person's Terry is taking insulin.
Yes.
And that he or she may want to use more insulin. I'm thinking about foods like peanut butter, but what are you going to put that peanut butter on? I mean, that's, all you can basically do is have eggs. I mean, there's Canadian bacon. I think I would vote for Canadian bacon if it's an option over bacon and sausage, because of the amount of saturated fat. But there aren't a ton of choices. I mean, usually cheese is around. I mean, you could ask for a couple eggs and some cheese melted on top. I mean, you also have to think of some relatively easy things that can be done in restaurants, and what they may have that you may not either see on the menu or see on the menu board.
Mm-hmm. How about your thoughts on Mexican food? This is a big, broad, general question in the chat room. What does Hope think of Mexican food?
I think Mexican food can be like I think about all cuisines, is that, I mean, as I tell people, I mean, you have choices pretty much no matter what kind of restaurant you eat at, other than, the fish and chip shack or the, fried chicken joint where, obviously what the menu is. But I can choose to go into a Mexican restaurant. I can, ask for those chips to not be put down on the table because they're just pretty darn addicting, but bring back that salsa because I want to use plenty of that. It's got some good flavor to it. It's basically vegetables, and you can use it to just add some flavor. You can use it as a salad dressing. You can really use it, which sort of brings up pico de gallo, which is another good flavorful item that you can order as a side item. I think, splitting and sharing to me is really the way that at least I survive in restaurants. In Mexican restaurants, one of the things that's good is that you can typically order a la carte. So you can say, okay, I want a chicken soft taco. And you can get one of those, and you can get a side of black beans, and you can get a side of guacamole. So, I mean, I talk about in the book about menu creativity, and you can sort of make up your own meal that way. There's certainly our Mexican salads. One of the hazards there are those crispy shells, which I would ask for that to be made without a crispy shell, and to, hold if there are sort of taco chips or nacho chips at the bottom of that you don't get that. I would ask to hold the sour cream, because that's just, I mean, to me, that's sort of wasted fat calories that has some saturated fat and cholesterol. So, I mean, there definitely are options. I mean, to me, it's about picking and choosing. It's about portion control.
So you brought up issues of fat and saturated fat and cholesterol, and it's an interesting topic that a lot of people with diabetes, of course, aren't only concerned about carbohydrates, but we have other dietary concerns as well in terms of healthy eating in general, potential for high blood pressure and things like that.
Cardiovascular disease, yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about sort of balancing the variety of things that we, as people with diabetes, really want to either have a lot of or be very moderate with in our diets?
Sure. I mean, the current guidance, and this is from both American Diabetes Association, from National Heart, Lung, and Blood, from the recent Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee report that just came out a couple months ago, 2015. There is, I would say, generally accepted consensus around that people, and particularly people with diabetes at risk of cardiovascular disease or particular risk for cardiovascular disease, should continue to limit saturated fat. Where the information on fat, I would say, has changed a little bit over the years is sort of this, okay, so the calories that you eat from fat, should they more be from polyunsaturated fats or monounsaturated fats? And the call these days, based on research, nutrition, like many sciences, is an evolutionary science. We know what we know based on the research that we have to date. And there are changes that happen due to research. Today, there seems to be just a slight benefit of more polyunsaturates over monounsaturates. It's not about one is good, one is bad. I mean, one of the things that people often don't know is all the fats that we eat, and let's just talk about liquid oils for the moment. They all have some amount of saturated fat, some amount of poly, and some amount of mono. It's just how they come. Just the more liquid oil you can use, because that's unsaturated, and the least amount of saturated fat you can use, the better. And, if you want to talk total calories, I mean, the guidelines today are maybe a little bit more liberal on total calories from fat, in the vicinity of 30 to 40% of calories is fat, based on, and I'm going like this because of, it depends on, we have a total amount of calories that we eat. The nutrients in foods are from three places: carbohydrate, protein, and fat. Foods are packages of nutrients. If you are going to eat less fat, then by virtue of foods and the way they come, you're going to eat more carbohydrate. If you're going to eat more fat, you can eat a little bit less carbohydrate. And if you're going to eat less carbohydrate, you're going to eat more protein, just by virtue of food choices.
Because it's got to be made out of something.
It's got to be made out of something.
I have tried so hard to find the food that is, in fact, made out of thinking about, I don't want
cotton candy, is it?
I don't want too much carbohydrate because of how it affects my blood sugar, and I don't want too much protein because I'm concerned about my kidney function, and I don't want too much fat because that's just supposed to be bad for me. And in the end, I've got a nice tall glass of water to enjoy. So the balancing act, as you well know, can be incredibly challenging.
It is. It is. I mean, and I think, to eat healthy today in the face of our sort of fast-paced, restaurant-driven world is not easy. But again, it absolutely can be done. I mean, you need to feel comfortable making a special request. You need to feel comfortable being creative with a menu. I mean, the other night in this Thai restaurant, the dish said the chicken was fried. I was like, can you saute it? It came sauteed. I mean, sometimes I don't think people are creative enough in restaurants to at least ask the questions of, could something be done this way? Could I get more broccoli on that dish because I want more veggies? I've been in Subway where I've said, I want less meat. I want more veggies. I mean, they're standing there making your sandwich. And that's why that place is great. And, you can, though you're not the one making it, you can at least control what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. So we got another question from a member whose handle is Bad Moon T2, who is a longtime member of ours. He has type 2 diabetes, and it's managed with diet and exercise. He is not using insulin. And so one of the things that he finds helpful for him is to be careful with the amount of carbohydrate that he eats, helpful and in fact quite necessary for him. And so he was wondering if you have any more suggestions about how to find lower carbohydrate meals in restaurants. And again, I think this goes back to kind of being creative, seeing what all is available on the menu that you can kind of cobble together. Are there particular cuisines?
I think our restaurants in general are pretty protein focused. They're pretty meat centric, particularly American type of restaurants. I mean, so I think, it sounds like veggies and meat. I think the challenge is, I guess, having to order things and asking for this not to be brought and that not to be brought.
Uh-huh. You mean like getting a meat and vegetable thing and hold the potato, or no need for a basket of bread with that?
Right, or a burger without the bun, or that type of thing.
Mm-hmm. Creativity is the name of the game. Do you have any particular advice for people who are vegetarian or vegan?
I do think that's becoming easier today. I would say vegan to me is definitely harder than vegetarian, because it's just by virtue of more options. And then there's also, within vegetarian, as that's, what along that sort of gamut are you following? So, again, I think that it's a matter of being creative, making special requests. I think we find the restaurants in our vicinity that will do what we need them to do. I thought your point about using Asian restaurants, using ethnic restaurants. Japanese restaurants might not be a bad idea for someone who's trying to eat pretty low carb, because you can usually get a piece of like teriyaki salmon or meat, or you can get grilled shrimp. and some vegetables. You know, obviously you're not going to want to do sushi if you're trying to eat very low carb, and the sushi rice actually has some sugar in it. I mean, what do you find works well for you? Or you mentioned Asian.
Well, aside from a lot of Asian cuisines that are very vegetable heavy.
I mean, salads.
Salad places.
Yep.
Again, even that can be tricky because salad dressings are a little bit like that delicious, sweet, gelatinous mystery sauce that you don't always know.
You try to just
your
do
salad dressing.
Olive oil and vinegar.
Yeah. When that's an option, I feel like that works well for me. I liked your suggestion about using salsa as potentially as a salad dressing, because that's you know, a whole other flavor if you get tired of oil and vinegar.
Right, and it's really pure vegetables. Yeah.
Awesome. These are great suggestions. So Hope, we at the moment we don't have any more questions in the chat room. So I wondered if you could just tell us in the last few minutes that we have a little bit more about the app, how people can get the app. What is it available for iPhone and Android? And then how do people use it as a resource?
Sure. So the app is called Eat Out Well, and it is available both on iTunes and Google Play. And it's available for free. So people can just go on, download it. And as I said, it's GPS driven. So it looks at where you are and gives you suggested restaurants within a certain mile radius. And then the nutrition information is for items in those restaurants. And the cool thing about the app is that the nutrition information is being updated as it was developed by a third party, not by ADA, but we're all working together. And they are updating the data because that's what they manage, a lot of restaurant nutrition information. So, and people can, information about the book, Eat Out, Eat Well, is available on my website. And people can either order it from ADA or order it from Amazon off my website, or go directly to either one of those places. And then there's also information about the app on my website as well.
Wonderful. We got one more question. We got a question in the chat room while you were talking just now, which is a topic that we haven't broached at all yet in this talk, and it's interesting. And that is from David, who is asking, what's your take on the etiquette of giving injections in public? This is a whole different topic, but it's still.
I think it's a good point. I mean, to me, it really depends on someone's comfort level. So I think there's two pieces of that. One is how you as a person taking insulin feels about doing that in public. And the other piece of it is, you know, how the people around you feel. I mean, you know, I think clearly there's an option if you don't feel like people are feeling comfortable, or you're not feeling comfortable, to use ladies or men's room. I also think that that you guys have find some very ingenious ways of giving insulin that, you know, if someone's not looking or knowing, that, you know, you can barely tell. And one of the things I like about using a pump is that giving an injection does become a press of a button, as opposed to physically taking an injection. But I think you got to know yourself. I think different scenarios and different restaurant settings call for probably different behaviors regarding insulin injection. So I don't think there's one answer that meets all settings. I mean, do you agree? I mean, you know, you're out with friends who know you really well, or your family who knows you very well, and they know this is totally part of your life, or or you're on a blind date. And whenever I say blind date, I now always remember Mr. Mike's story about about having a low. That's because I'm sure Manny told that story when we were doing one of our diabetes online community workshops at AADE.
It's a fantastic story. I think I
he probably wouldn't have felt comfortable giving an injection in that setting.
Potentially not. I would say that the piece that I agree with the most wholeheartedly is that I judge it entirely on my own comfort level. And if I think that I'm with someone who might be really uncomfortable seeing me do an injection, then I'll ponder, I don't want to make somebody else uncomfortable, of course. Right. Yeah. Or maybe given who the person is or something, maybe I don't care. And I think, well, they can just look away if they're okay. It really depends, as you said.
Yeah.
For me, the goal is for me to be comfortable, but that, of course, includes not making other people uncomfortable.
Right. And I also think the setting, in some, bustling restaurant where it's, going to be pretty, doing that is pretty not going to be seen, versus, in some, fancy dancy restaurant, which is pretty small. It's just different settings, different scenarios.
Well, Hope, thank you so much for being here with us today. It was really cool to learn about your new book, and congratulations. And thank you for your time and your expertise.
And thank you for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure. You take good care. We will be in touch. And goodbye to everyone in the chat room and everyone watching. Thanks for being here with us.